Hey everyone, I'm Stephen Like. Welcome to the brand new revamped Theater of Thought. I'm so glad you're with me. I'm using this as a metaphor, as an alliteration, a simile, however you want to do it. It really comes down to being a parable. Now, this is a parable of you being within this theater of your thoughts that make up reality. So the theater is the metaphor, you are the observer, you are the subject, and how do you deal with it? What do you do with it? What do you do with your theater? Like, you just wake up and you're in this body, slowly as a child, slowly having memories after everything being wiped. So what do you do with that? You didn't know you had a theater of thought. You didn't know you had software running within you. You didn't know there was a game of life that you had to play and make decisions for and be responsible for. So what kind of strategy and tactics can you have in light of that, in light of the game that we have going on? So that's the metaphor. That's the big idea. I know I'm not the first one to have used this as a metaphor, that life is a stage, life is a game, and so forth. And I didn't like the term of life being a game. I like life being a theater because I love home theater. I love electronics, audiophile. I'm an electronic nut. So all of that was applicable to me. But the game of life, when life is hard, it doesn't seem like you want to treat it as a game. These metaphors, these similes, and these analogies really just help make it so much more profound for me when you really see what's going on here. So 3 parts, 3 legs to the tripod of your truth, of my truth, the testimony of your truth. The 3 parts are the hardware tour, the software tune-up, and the strategy and tactics. The hardware is exactly the same as our computers. Everything that you think is solid is actually not. It's being compressed together and cordoned off. And because of that, that's how you get yourself into a little theater. And that's what you see right here with the hardware as well, and the hardware tour card deck that you can pull from. Here, all of our electrochemistry, bending and refracting this optical universe. So that's the omnisphere coming down to play the game. What's the game? It's the software, the game of life. And there's a lot of other games running. It's not just the game of life. There's also Monopoly and Pandemic and the game of the states and so many other game boards of exchange that we can have our minds come down and create a new experience of learning. So that's the software. What's running? How do we own and operate our game of life? So that's what you start to realize. Hey, when I own and operate, what kind of tactics am I have? Am I going to be just an operator, or am I also going to be an owner? And that's the only 2 things that I've seen divide the world and divide America, is between the owners and the operators, the shareholders and the stakeholders. So really quick, let me run through it. Let me take you into the theater of thought and how to own and operate your theater of thought. So go ahead and relax. Let me go ahead and full screen this here. Grab a chair, get comfortable, relax, and get ready for your theater of thought. So, the first part, the hardware. We got a hardware computer, we got a body, we got an earth, we got all the stuff that seems solid. What are we? Are we the solid stuff here? Well, we're being, existing as the essence of love unity. Everything comes from love and returns back to love. Being is oneness, it is pure light, but it desires to perceive itself as an opposite reflection of idea. That's what God said. Go out and create. Go out and learn and bring back to me what you learn. So before we were solid, we were an incubated idea of being love. So being becomes mind by observing polarity, such as light and dark, good and bad, either or. The world of opposites. And that's the first thing, is the concept of opposites, of light and dark. And you notice in the theater, we have to close down the shades. We have to, when you go to the theater, they shut the doors and they turn down the lights and they just have a little bit of emergency lights to get out. They don't have someone go prop up at the door. Hey, it's a beautiful day. We're going to leave the emergency exit doors open. it would completely flood the room. You don't have to, reason you don't have skylights. You have to have a dark game board, this polarity. But mind just sees this. Being wanted to express its desires as mind, as an idea of self-duality. How, if you're one, the being is all one, how do we have this experience of self-duality? Let's create a theater. Let's create a stage. Let's create characters, and let's create costumes. But that's what mind sees first, is the either-or. It needs something more stable now. So the oneness is starting to wrap itself into a little three-dimensional mirror here, called the delta, called the triangle. So it wants a real reality of all the realms that are out there. How can I make a realist reality where I can truly cut myself off and restart with a fresh game board to learn again and take that back to glorify the one, the all? Expressing this idea of unique persona. So I'm going to come down and be a little bit of my mother, a little bit of my father. We're going to wrap around. We're going to start swirling together and adjusting a little bit and putting my own spin on life. And the game of life says, hey, put your spin to win on it. So you are spin. You are a spin of the one love. But now you're starting to reflect. Now you're going to start to get a pedestal here. Now you're going to get scaffolding when you have this support. You've got these curves that are concentrating the mirrors and reflecting and flowing it. In the same way, you go into a mirror on either side. If you look on both sides, you can see how it endlessly repeats. It's a hall of mirrors. Formless psyche, formless mind is now becoming form, or mind manifesting. Mind is starting to become a solid body. But how does it all work together? That's the spirit. That's the quantum. That's the dark matter and the dark energy. We're all trying to put something. How does form return back to the formless from where it came? For another refolding of the 3-in-1, because our linear minds in our culture and our society is very left to right, very linear. So now we're talking about the time here. This is your temple of time that you have right within you, everywhere, as a hall of mirrors. This is your tripod of the testimony of the truth of who you are as an observer and an experiencer of time. And that's a profound thing, because a lot of people don't talk about time. It seems really deep, like Einstein stuff and all. When you realize you're an observer of relative time, now you're going to start to see, hey, these are little camera lenses, just like my webcam, just like on my phone. Everything is optics, all coming together here, and it can be channeled. The circle can be channeled into a square or into a tripod, and that's the delta here, the ancient symbol of change. Make it 3 dimensions, 4 triangles. Now you have a tetrahedral theater of thought, and that also happens to be the Merkaba, the light spirit vehicle. It's a crystal, it's a shape, it's an idea. Again, it doesn't exist, it's motion. This hardware is a misnomer. We're not actually taking a tour of our hardware. It's a misnomer. It's not hard, but that motion creates a compression density, and therefore we have, solid reality for us to work with, a realist of all realms again. So we got crystals here. We have these shapes that are affecting the spin of time, our light spirit vehicle. Time flowing in either direction as spin. Each twirl and twist, it's a color ray, it's a sound, it's a motion. There's so many different ways to look at what flows through this very, very simple shape. What I like to see is that time has changed. THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, is the same shape affecting what's called psychoactive time inside your theater. Who is the observer? Who is the subject reflecting out? Who is this subject in here? Reflecting out to the outside. So all solid reality is simply shapes. It's bending and reflecting electric waves of light. These are our little theaters here. Here we are right here in the delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol. Your body creates these natural entheogens, or the generator of God within. Now, God already exists. God is not this shape, but to us, we call it the generator of God within because of its effects. It is our psychedelic circuitry of ourself. There's no other way to put it. And that manifests the mind as solid, but it's also pliable at the same time. That's the spirit. That's the mystery. The endless, endless mystery that we take back and say, wow, here's oneness becoming duality, becoming the idea of separation, a unique persona. So my theater and you have your theater hardware. Both of it seems solid, but it's really just a compressed reflection of our soul idea, powered by the free will of all that is God, all being. So you have your theater, I have my theater, we're all stacked together, creating a 8 billion multiplex theater. 8 billion different movies all playing at the same time, all connected to each other. That's why I have that picture at the very beginning here of what are you? That's why each one of us are a theater within a theater within a theater, and we're all here on this pyramid together. So, your hardware seems solid, but our body, our senses, all nature, all reality of solid reality, all realm of solid reality is simply electric light motion. So this is getting deep. You got to really, if you want to feel this, now you have the chance. Now you have the ability to experience these things of saying, hey, this is my theater. Hey, do I want to kick this doorstop out here and close this theater down and have my own experience inside of this here as an electromagnetic being? So everyone's like, oh, this puts drugs on a pedestal. It's not spiritual. You're not doing the hard work. Okay, here's the issue. All of this is leverage, the leverage of the mind. It's just like a screwdriver or a wheel. There is no power in the lever, but in the fulcrum that directs the power of the being who's observing it. Because still and silent within you, to even do any of this to begin with, is the inner, infinite omni-observer. This is your entire crew, your team, your family, the whole group of the others that are with you. And we'll get into that more. This is the whole orchestrating of this stage play, of what you see, looking out and coming into these life lessons of growth and transformation that we have been doing many and many times over and over again. So the issue is with you have an endocannabinoid system. It monitors the balance of all other systems, is just it in a nutshell. So you can bend and refract, and it connects your neurons of all 11 other systems, all other 11 electrical systems that monitor. That's why this is a suppressed technology. This is why we aren't healed, but we just simply medicate to not actually get the food as our medicine. This is food that we were meant to have because we share this shared electrochemistry with the plant kingdom, with many, many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other creatures. It's been here for 650 million years, the cannabinoid system, using it as a communication system because it is a crystal. It's the exact same that we have our electronics based on, crystalline technology, vibrating energy and information. That's why you tune your radio in. Tune your CB into channel 14, channel 15. Those are just different crystals. Exact same within this theater is plugging in these electro compounds, these crystalline shapes into the receptors to change the effects of time, the flow of time, the greatness of time. That all time is now, time is not linear, and that shift from linear time to all of time can get really convoluted. And that's why you have panic, you have anxiety, you have stress, you just feel tense, you feel all that electricity jolting through your mind and continually causing cellular damage and tissue damage and inflammation. So all of this is monitored. Your body's natural state is balance. CBD, THC balance is what brings your body back into its natural harmony. At least the plant does the 50% of it, saying, okay, well, the conduits are connected. The wiring is all good. Because all of us are so endocannabinoid deficient because of our food supply. that kids are going to extreme forms of epilepsy and punching their face, where they wear face masks, and then as soon as a nasal spray of CBD, THC into there, or drops on their tongue sublingually, whatever, it's like within a minute, it's like 30 seconds, you see just what it does to the body as a neurotransmitter. So we see what we are as cannabinoid deficient. Once you get the connectors, then you realize, okay, now what? How do we have practical psychedelics? And that's the second part. That's the software that is running through the theater. And so I've chose this. The others gave me the life is a game of self and civilization, ideology, and innovation. This is the template that I got from the plant kingdom, from cannabis, from the fungi kingdom. All of this came together through my guides and through my others, is saying, okay, here's what that little tetrahydrocannabinol actually is. Here's why you have a delta 9 THC molecule that is forbidden as a drug war, as a dangerous drug war. Because here's what you're doing. You're going into what happens with a pyramid, what happens with a prism. You see the array, you see the spectrum unfold and stretch. You can see how light is bend and flexible and pliable, and therefore time is all compressed and flexible and pliable. And so we go into profound things about the nature of reality. Even so, how do you make that practical? How do you have practical psychedelics? And the software is the game running through it. And if you can see it as a game of yourself in the civilization and the ideologies, be able to recognize what's going on and be able to understand your emotions that are fueling these ideologies that you get, then you can see, oh, it's an innovation, and I can continue to remake this. I can continually change my ideas, my ideology, and then this innovation called myself within the civilization. Don't so much try to change civilization, you change yourself, and then that changes civilization. So why do I exist? What's my purpose? All those big questions. Why is this here? Why am I in my theater? Why do we have the screen? Why do I have the projector? What's going on here? What am I to do with all of this? So to experience, coming back from the one, to go out and have an unbiased interchange of self and selves in an interactive civilization, we need a holographic game board that seems real. Again, we get to this fact that reality is not solid. It is simply a dream. But we need something solid. We need something that's holographic, but overall, it's going to seem like earth, wind, fire, water, and that's it. Air. Just the basics is how our senses are going to perceive that. So, but that's what it is. We're here wrapping around through ourselves, through the one, through this torus shape of our electromagnetic spectrum. So we are literally electromagnetic beings of ourself here, of the 0 and 1, the on, off, the either, the or. So we spawned into Earth's game board of civilization. So it's flat. All you have to do is move from A to B to advance civilization. And so life, my kids love Game of Life. When I first showed this to my son, Micah, he was like, oh, life, I love life. I'm like, oh, do you play it after school or whatever? He's like, yeah. And so I think he was like 7 at the time. And so he just wanted to spin the dial here and get the cars to go as fast. To him, it was just a race to the end here. He doesn't understand the exchange, getting married and all that. And yeah, he liked to, put people in the cars and all that. But, playing the action cards, dealing with the money, it was just too complicated here. So adults wish it could be that. We wish we had paydays like this here, just regular paydays here, and where it looks like everyone can go to the hospital. Everyone understands the nature of the heart and the nature of the institutions that we're doing here. And why do we exchange? Why are we going to the moon? Why is our whole goal just to get to the end here and to have retirement? And then our kids do the same thing. So life really gets hard when you look at this. Is obviously through the lens of a game, for a family game. When I was a kid, it had, really, really awesome models, like 3D plastic models that came out of it. The 80s version was great. The new competitive model must be trimmed down, and that's why the spinner doesn't even spin. It's really quite a piece of junk. But it shows you a lot about the parable of life, of what are we doing? What is this civilization here? Because this really encompasses everything of what I was taught for the past 43 years. And I'm like, okay, how do I make this my own? How do I own this game? Instead of just doing what I was told. and being a people pleaser. So looking down, can you see the hidden spin, the swirl, the looping cycle on repeat of what we got to do here? What's the game? If you look, I removed the logo here. It looks linear. It looks like life is linear, is the point. But life is actually a cycle. So here it is. Your purpose is to get educated right here. Information. Getting your cap and gown. Graduating. All of this is information when you're first born here. You're getting educated. To get a job here in the buildings. So you can buy stuff. So you can invest and buy more stuff. And then once you have enough invested, you can go on vacations, and then you can get married, who will have kids, who will do the same. And that's been 5,000 years, 12,000. I mean, I'm not an anthropologist or anything, but that seems like that's pretty much been what we collectively believe as a society is essentially the two flat dimensional game board of life that we play. Culture insists that our purpose of what we should be doing with our time is to produce, consume, and reproduce. Right here. That's the game of life. That's what I'm teaching my kids to do, because I was taught that as well. Now here, as an incentive to work harder and harder than the next guy, scarcity and cutthroat competition are utilized. So now, instead of a flat game board, it's actually elevated. You actually pull that middle up, that center, and now you got your octahedron, your four-sided pyramid instead of your tetrahedron. So now while it looks like a fair flat playing field, competition and scarcity creates a hidden pyramid scheme that's concentrating power and control at the top here. Your objective is to survive by climbing the pyramid as high as you can while it moves like an escalator. If you stand still, you're not keeping up. It's king of the mountain, winner take all. Can you survive, connive, or thrive? I mean, that is life. Competition rules everything. Cut through competition. And so your idea is that you don't want to fall down the pyramid. You want to stay where you are. If you're like spawned, hey, I'm kind of in the middle here on the scheme of owning and operating. I don't have to operate here on the bottom. I'm an owner. I've got some inheritance or something like that helps you get up to the top. You got connections. You got good education. All of that comes into play. You have a solid spiritual life in church and guided of why you're here. All of those things come into play as to your position on the collective 8 billion theater multiplex that we call our collective game board of planet Earth here. But this is how it actually plays out in day-to-day reality, is that it's moving and you got to keep moving. If you have assets, you're floated up, don't have to keep moving, except to hold on to the assets that keep holding you up. And you want to keep going because eventually someone could come and nab your assets. So it's meant to spur you on. It's meant to see the pyramid schematic, the electrical schematic that this is in your mind, and then you can see how it projects out to this game board, and you'll be able to see how your emotions come into that play and your decisions and your choices, and you'll love being able to play your own game of life. Now look here. Within you, the pyramid is our projector here. It projects the four institutions externally, the four institutions that provide our foundations, our orthodoxies, our authorities, our establishments that we're always fighting against. But the four facets are really my four facets of insight inside of me. And so it's projecting these four institutions of culture: education and economy, and church and state. And that's the main thing that's running culture. Aside from that, if you look at it as a neutral focuser, back to the hardware here, the straight lines represent the intellect, the masculine, logic, reason, rigidity, the seed, the Euclidean, the one, the on, the yes, whereas the curves here, the zero, represent intuition, receptive, feminine, emotion, feeling, flexibility, the soil, the Gaussian, the zero, the off, the null, the opposites. So you see these here, these seemingly overlapping opposites going through here as church and state. So four facets: information, inquiry, idea, initiate. Information is your education. You just start pulling it in, start learning, going to school. But at the top of the pyramid, it's the media, it's the institutions that have the publishing houses and so forth. And you can say the corporations that run the media and run the information, classifying information. All of that is applicable to the top of the pyramid. The higher you up, the more you get. This feeds over here into this facet called God, called inquiry, called curiosity, called what does this mean to me? What does this information mean to me? And what do I do with it is the idea. That's the goal. That's the exchange. How do I'm receiving intelligence and consciousness. What do I do with it? How do I express it? Why do I express it? It's the big why here for the inquiry. And how do I start to formulate that into an idea that I can exchange? But that idea is just a concept until I initiate and govern it over here. And governance, as you come to the top of the pyramid, also is the power, obviously, of our governmental powers that be. So that's how you really see it being played out into those four facets. So what it means to me is that I was raised with a cultural ideology that really defaulted to a lot of individualistic cut-through climbing of the pyramid, that I'm better, we're going to be better, we're better than all the poor people in Cabrini Green in downtown Chicago, but we're going to go witness to them and go hand out tracts. But there's a lot more going on that I didn't realize until I fell down the pyramid, until I was like, hey, I'm going to be my own businessman. I'm going to make my own business. I'm going to make millions. I'm going to retire. And then I'm going to tell everybody how to do it, just like everybody else does. All these other self-help gurus, and everyone says, here's how you make a success of your life. I did all that stuff, but I burned out. And so in the process, I saw this here that I was really, instead of climbing the pyramid, I was really, the lesson was, hey, I'm to be the pilot of my pyramid, of my projected self-perception, because it comes back to me. So I was like, hey, I'm the purveyor of my potentials simply by my perspective when you look at this. But this, now you're going to see, here's where the emotions came in. This is what kept tripping me up right here in this area of deep, deep anger and resentment for many, many years, as many of you have come to also explore within your theater. Okay, so to be a pilot and a purveyor of your potentials, you got to look at the game board. You got to look at the schematic, the flow of electricity, because this is an electric universe. So you will find at paulstephenlike.com, Theater of Thought, you will find the four facets of Insight Game Board that you can print and play, both the color that you see here and a black and white as well. So once you print it out, or here's an example, the print and plays don't have any of these things in here. I put these in here just for placeholders. You can put whatever you want. The idea is that you need to map out your schematic of your personality concepts, your emotional colors, also been called the chakras and so forth. In Sanskrit, the wheel of this energy, this light spin and flow coming through these various facets. So you will, and again, here in the shortest, you perceive information as your guide, you inquire of the innermost God, idea, construct is the gold, and initiating a judgment governs the behavior and the outcome. So treat it really neutrally here. It's the emotions here in the colors that give it that life and give it that spectrum here. So you can see here, this is also standard Sanskrit, Hindu, and Buddhist teachings of the gurus of the chakra wheels here. This is pretty standard, that you're coming from darkness. So you want to be in your theater. You're going to fear that you're going to leave the theater. You don't want to leave this theater once you're incarnated. And you're like, I'm here. What am I to do with it? I don't want to leave, but I feel like I'm going into the darkness here. So that's the whole survival, which is job one. It's spiritual to be a survivor. So as we spread here in the spectrum, we come to the orange, we come to the separation of our sexuality, of our individuality, and we want to reproduce that in that yellow. Our ambition, our drive, our gut feeling, we want to keep reproducing that which we love. And as you get to green, we want to keep reproducing. You want to mitigate the fear of survival and want to keep reproducing and producing. Then you want to communicate. The more you can communicate that you love, the better chance you have of survival. And as we get higher intelligence, we get the fifth sense, we get the sixth sense, we get the third eye. All of this coming together to process, how do I understand this here? How does it all fit together back to here? How does it all come together both as a flow of in and out? At the top, you can see this here as either you're fueling the main cultural pyramid with your anger, or you can say, hey, I am the pyramid. I'm taking my pawn off that, and I'm going to be this self-managing, self-governing, self-inquiring, self-taught pyramid once I see what's going through here. And if you need a private session to go through here to make all this more sense for you and how you apply this as a template to your life, please let me know. That's how you make it personal. And that's how you can get the most out of this here and out of understanding the emotions and the thoughts that hold you captive. So now that you've seen the game board, how do we have strategy and tactics with this here in light of our pyramid scheme that we do have that we need to climb here? So how do we make our moves here? If you look at this, we got the collective pyramid. We can't collapse the collective pyramid. I know that everyone, that fear and that anger, and you want to be a martyr, you want to collapse it down, or you want to collapse your own theater down. Why don't I just demolition this? Why do I keep it? I want it all. I'm so depressed in fear and anxiety of survival, of the purposelessness and the futility of life, whatever the case may be of what's going through there. I'm ready to collapse this electromagnetic structure, and then it all goes away, allegedly. It's all perspective. It's all perspective of self right here with the magnifying glass. Each of us are our own pyramids, and then we're all projecting up onto this collective pyramid that we call everyday 3D reality, our solid reality, and those are the 4 facets that are in there. So, I mean, you got everything going on. You're like, what do you do about the injustice? What do you do about laws that are written by liars and the lawless, and the persecution of the poor, the drug war, and all the billions of lives lost? And the suppression of legitimate plant medicines and the racism and so forth. You could look at that. You could look at the economy over here. Everyone's stressed out and everyone's got their armor on. But you can also see that there's a lot of other things here. There's a lot of other options we can link together and all do this together. So there's going to be strategy and tactics that we've received from culture, and then ones we can have now. And really, it's operating the tools, and we own the trade. I'm going to deal a lot with money because everyone's like, if we all had enough, then we'd all get along. And that does, if we can master exchange, then we can master anything. That will be the final culmination of it here. And so, because I've given this information, this presentation to other people, and they're like, I don't see how it can be any other way. And I'm like, this is how you do it. You do it both and. You can't say, oh, we just got to, yes, you can't fight it. You got to let it crumble down, but there's something new that is being rebirthed here within civilization and ourselves. So how do you make the moves is the question here. So the objective of the game of life is our collective pyramid is a moving escalator of constant stair-stepping survival. 8 billion theater of thought operators are trying to squeeze their tetrahedron to the top. There's 8 billion of us all trying to climb there, and that's why you can pull up and you can be driving a piece of junk Toyota with 500,000 miles and it's barely running while you're doing your Uber delivering, and then next to you is a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. We're on the same horizontally, but our pyramids are much, much bigger because of the power that at least you think that he represents, that he has, at least to be able to acquire that much and to have that kind of asset. So we're all trying to squeeze our top. So are we going to survive, or are we going to go into symbiosis like the rest of nature? We know what this is. I don't need to go into this here of how everyone is clawing their way to the top and has that. And what do you do? How do you not fall down? Or if you fall down and you're down here in the quicksand, how do you get up? Like this guy, asking for some daily bread and trying to survive. The system doesn't let him back in, but we close down your tent city, just like we did here in Nashville. We used to have a big tent city. When I go Uber driving over, people are like, oh, what is all that? And it's like, oh yeah, that's the homeless population here. So the city shuts it down and says, oh, we got other options for you. So you really got to work hard to keep up. And it's not until you're in those situations that you're looking at living out of your car that you realize, oh man, how did I not play the game? Why did I play my cards to this point here? So we don't have to get that's survival. That's cutthroat competition. Symbiosis is us giving and receiving together. How do we do that? That first comes by reclaiming your personal power right here, like a Carry Contractor is doing here. Power with your tools, power with yourself, and power with your pyramid. And that's what we've been talking about here today, is that you're the power, you reclaim it. Because when you hand your power away up the collective pyramid, You get position, power, profit, and privacy are all concentrated at the top. So we get mad at politics, we get mad at our government, and furious that we keep giving our power to them, or we don't, or we have to have a pendulum swing between one or the other. And we can't just make more targeted decisions with our elected officials. So everyone's trying to do that. We get upset that money rules everything. Money is a universal instrument of exchange. It's an exchange of energy, of our imagination. Here in the theater, we gotta have it solidified and quantified somehow. It's not even really solidified anymore, although gold is the one last solid solid asset. But everything else is the zeros and ones, just imaginary numbers on the Rothschild servers. So, but the point is, we do need to measure that, and that's how we keep track. Otherwise, we're like, oh well, how do we measure our time? How do we quantify that? So money is neutral. It just gets concentrated at the top. We have an $18 trillion a year GDP here in America, and it's all being bottlenecked at the top here. And so all the potential at the bottom is sent up while the profit is squeezed out to the top here. Stakeholders at the bottom, shareholders, again, operators at the bottom, owners at the top. In the governance facet, obviously we're all civilians, and then you get classified as you go higher and higher. But nothing is received that is not already given. Cheap resources, cheap labor at the bottom, the earth, all that is given. And we simply receive it. How do we re-give it back? But we really get upset with these guys at the top. And I've been here, again, this is 6 years of being in the fiery furnace of the bottom of those lower chakra, fear and survival anxiety emotions, to where I'm like, I've got to lash out. The only thing for me to do is hate the system and fight back at the system with my anger. And I have pain, so I have permission to hate and to fight. But let's honor and learn from our leaders that are at the top. They're there as a reflection of something we still need to learn. What do? Basically, as profit is concentrated to the top, to the shareholders, everything else is pushed down to us. And that's why you don't want to be at the bottom of the pyramid, technically. Because cash flow liability, having a regular paycheck on the game of life, the taxes that support our communities and give us shared assets, shared resources. Obviously, our health care, we have none. Punitive legislation, if you don't keep up, is passed down through middle management, down to the community, employees, laborers, freelancers. All of the liability gets pushed down to those that are at the bottom of the pyramid of scarcity management. And it's still a stressful job. And then you got the trades, and then you got labor. So this is what I felt, certainly the trap of liability and scarcity, being a freelancer for 20 years. I've had other W-2 jobs as well, but mostly I've always been self-employed. Cash flow is key. Cash flow is king. Cash is king, but consciousness is queen. We'll learn about that. Taxes, that blindsided me. Healthcare blindsided me when I realized, hey, I'm in so much pain, but I can't work. And how do you buy your life back one symptom at a time? And all of those liabilities were just simply pushed down to me to where I'm like, it's when you're by yourself, when you're in survival mode, it's really, really tough to keep up. If you got your connections, if you got your body, you got your health, and you can work your connections and be symbiotic, then you can do much better and much farther, go so much more farther in business. I think there's so much individualism that I went off the deep end, really, because I want to be, my dad was always self-employed, my uncle self-employed, two of my uncles are self-employed, so I want to be a success. I've got big shoes to fill. And so I'm always doubling down on ideas and inventions and business business ideas to try to finally get that massive set of assets there. When you don't keep up, though, so I kept up for a while. It was great 2008, six-figure income finally, but keeping up was tougher in 2009. This is just civil warrants. You imagine the anxiety when you get criminal warrants for child support. And that also blindsided me as well, because I didn't know that child support is a criminal imprisoned punishment. And that's a whole other topic. But man, talk about the anxiety inside my theater of thought. So basically, we're born a single-member limited liability company. You need to compete with imaginary pass-through entities who can vote as a human but do not have the needs of a human. This is Citizens United. It's a whole other thing. So this is what's going on. If you can learn this as a young person, you can see the game. Why are you doing this? Why are you learning? Why are you spending all your time in that facet for the first 20 years of your 22, 30 years of your life, trying to work your way up the facet of education? Get more education, get more education, get more management skills, get to the C level. All of that, the climbing of this pyramid of scarcity, this will help you understand where you are and where you want to be instead. So where is your focus? Are you an operator or are you an owner? We're taught to be operators. You're learning so you can be an operator in a factory, but really we want to be an owner. Your management and your businesses want you to take ownership when we exchange, the ownership of the idea. So we separate so much from perspiration of the operators down here, you get middle management, and the owner of the idea who's going to say and give and bark all the orders, and the idea, the leadership, is at the top here and disseminating that down here. But you can see, for me as a freelancer, again, all the liabilities down here. I was operating royalty-free with my video business. I was just operating the camera, doing tasks. This is the big thing, the time and the tasks. At the bottom is the process of tasks, operation, and at the top here, you're in the business of time. So if you're in the business of capital, you're in the business of time, of capital aggregating. But in here, there's a process and a project and products that are exchanged and platforms. All of that's the middle, the actual solidifying of giving something there. The idea is to raise yourself up to be rights managed and have those assets and knowledge. But how do we do that in light of that? You can't just jump up, you can't steal, you can't connive. How do we do this? Well, tilt sideways. Tilt this whole pyramid sideways to level out the playing field. And now you want to play the game of tasks and time. And that's the big difference. And we can all play that together. So your product, your job is to be a steward of a process and the ability to fashion an idea in here into an innovation, an idea into an outcome. So now you're going to actually be more focused and targeted with your perspiration when it is time to push the buttons and turn the cogs and make the product. But you're going to also be part of the idea, whether you're self-employed, whether you're working for someone else, whether you're a contractor. You first of all realize the genius that is within you, the inspiration and the imagination that you have access to. And then you can be more targeted. You're not just burning yourself out with labor. And then integrate it. Say, how do I not just collect my paycheck and, oh, I'm done, the project's done. How is it working for you? How are those outcomes? How are those integrating? How are people responding? Are they watching? Are they listening? Are they responding? And then you actually realize, oh, I'm actually looking at the recycling here, the perpetuity, once I get the integration. Now I've got a whole flow. I got a whole machine. And that will take anybody who's just someone who's at low on the pyramid. If you do this probably with any industry, you will work your way up. You may not be there at that company, but you will certainly find a company that appreciates that you were understanding that you were trying to be the whole pyramid. Not just be an operator that sits there and tells, well, tell me what to do, boss. No, I'm taking ownership as if this were mine. So first, the biggest thing you have, no matter what, is your expertise. First, lease that expertise and saying, hey, this is my CPU, and I'm leasing that to you. Okay? Then I'm going to fashion my tools and my tasks and do the actual crunching of the work and the labor and the pushing of the buttons. But then I'm also going to care about cultivating those outcomes in perpetuity. That is being the full pyramid here. So no matter where you are on this pyramid, if you now can be a self-taught, self-managing theater of thought from the bottom to the top when you understand your emotions and why you are doing what you are doing. It will really help you understand that. So do we compete to survive, compete to cooperate? You've got all of the burdens here. I've already gone into that. The idea is to unify. It's not be alone. Turn that liability into viability when you join your abilities together. So everyone's an operator. You have a liability. You're born a limited liability, single member, limited liability company. And that's that with your social security number. How are you going to produce? How are you going to consume? And how are you going to reproduce that? That's what the IRS wants to know. So, and that's what society expects of you. So you're going to be an operator. Can we all own? Can we all get to the top? Or can we all own together here? Now islands of operators of liability become owners of shared sustainability because we're sustainable. We're all being a collective owner here. So the guild, if you see yourself as a trades guilder, it's a nonprofit fellowship. It's a self-managed brand of contract craftsmen and craftsmen who pool their time, talents, and treasure around this shared love of the tools of the trade. I know that's a lot here. The idea, if you love lighting on films, then all the lighting guys come together and share best practices, share their unique intellectual property. Don't give that intellectual property out, and don't try to hide away in your individuals. Oh, I'm so better, and have to disparage other people who love being an audio mixer, who love being a coder, who love being a fashion designer, who love thinking of social entrepreneurial ideas to change the world. Don't compete. Do it all together. Whatever this is here, trade the time, treasure, and talents all together. Because when you do, it's really an incredible energy. I've done a lot of videos at conferences and seminars and expos, and when you see people really hashing out an industry that they love, like we're going to heal people, and they're all joining together with their ideas and sharing their best practices. It's really an exciting time to see, hey, there's a lot. It took me from like, man, I'm always so despairing about the world. And then I see people, hey, the ideas are grassroots. They're really hidden, but it's when people get together, the idea becomes magnified. So unify. That's what I learned after 43 years of individualism. So more details on this individually. In closing, own and operate. You have to own and operate your franchise of freelancing. That little theater, you have to own it. You have to operate it. If you don't own it, someone else will own it for you because you're giving that power away. And that's the growth and the transformation, the shedding of the skin. Is that you're gonna share your time, talents, and treasure around that tool of the trade, around that shared knowledge, that technique, that modality, whatever it is, whatever this tool, this physical tool is. The needs of that customer are now encircled with expertise from each skill set, auditioning for roles that rotate around this shared idea. Like, say someone's sick, hey, instead of all of the chiropractors competing right here, they're all together, and so they're all working for this outcome of this patient. Right here is the naturopath. Right here is the allopathic. Right here is the nutritionist. Each one of them all working together in covering each spectrum of modality, instead of saying, well, I tried this chiropractor, that didn't work, and I tried those supplements, that didn't work. Yeah, I've tried changing my diet, or I've tried doing this, and so everyone's competing, and you really got to get a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth and eighth, opinion. You're doing all of this from competition. When they all work together, we're working for a shared outcome. So when these individual proprietors, you need to be that individual sole proprietor, but just don't do it alone. Do it in a partnership. So when proprietors are in partnerships, we will exchange prosperity in perpetuity, and that's what you want, is the perpetuity of that prosperity, that the pipeline's always going to be there, and you can go to sleep at night knowing that your bills are always taken care of, and that we always be able to exchange prosperity for everyone, and that there's not all of the theft and conniving in the world here. That's how we will change that, is by symbiosis. So in closing, guilds play the game of both owner and operator. You're becoming a steward of profit and a family of symbiosis. When profit is recirculated back down here, the prosperity regrows. It's sown and it comes back up. So capital needs labor, labor needs capital. It's not one or the other. They're all neutral here. When ownership is recycled back down to the stakeholders and having them on the boards and so forth, and getting their input and actually having them as stakeholders, now you've really got a family of symbiosis. Now you have something sustainable, not trying to make it so big for just a few people at the top. So that's the thing. I think that's why we want to heal this pain of the pyramid of Earth, the pyramid scheme, because it's ripping us to shreds between stakeholder and shareholder, owner and operator here. So it'll make you really sad, but that is actually the game of self, that you're being tricked into your own loneliness and your despair and your survival here, and these scenarios and these circumstances. Because you're looking again in this hall of mirrors. You are looking in this quantum hall of potential that you're collapsing down. It's a whole other discussion, way beyond the scope of this video. But that really is what it is that you don't exist except as a potential, and you have multiple parallel, simultaneous past lives that are all coming into affecting your gameplay right now. coming from the other spectrums here. But we focus so much on fighting these guys, getting angry, trying to climb the top of the pyramid. How do we heal that? Well, with the children of the earth, they come in with a whole new perspective on culture. And so they're going to have to be on the pyramid, but not be of the pyramid. They're going to understand that there's something to the self. There's something to the optics that are coming through our eyes when we see each other. There is something to the eternal validity of the soul and the electromagnetic cosmos that we are projecting in and around and through us. We will have to come face to face with who the self is, because we're told a lot of times, don't be selfish, don't be self-centered. Oh, but be self-reliant. Go have self-esteem. So the self is completely confused about what it's supposed to be and what it's supposed to do. But that's the game of life. That's healing the pain of the pyramid. That's the strategy. I want to close with a quote, because we're going back to love here as we close down the theater. As you close down your eyes and you realize what's in here, tell thou to man, I am in all things, centering them, but I'm without all these things, controlling them. All is rhythmic, balanced interchange. That is the most profound experience. That is the most profound definition I've ever heard of God, of the personhood of the great all-one love that we are, that we spring forth and go back to constantly. That's the theater of thought. That's the tour of the hardware, your electromagnetic entheogens, everything you eat, everything you consume, all those crystallines make up this tapestry of time. What do you do with it? Play the game of life inside. Be an owner-operator of your theater of thought. That's the strategy, the tactics. Reach out and say, hey, I don't want to be a sole proprietor solely alone. Thanks so much. This is the Theater of Thought. I'm Pastor Paul. Smash that like button, comment, contact me, whatever you need, I'm here. Until next time, thanks for watching the Theater of Thought.